Good afternoon, anti-novelists and friends. Finally, welcome back to this episode of Zettelkasten for fiction writers, where imagination finds order. I've taken a few days off. Hopefully I can get through this video without coughing my head off or having to blow my nose. I'll do my very best. It's been a long week, but I think I'm on the mend. So let's get after it. I've gotten several awesome questions. Beverly, Shelley, Macy, I'm going to address all of your questions, not in the order that I received them, but in the order that makes sense based on the progression of this series. So this question is from Macy. She asks, when I'm looking at the plot points, do I have to write them in order from front to back, or is there room for fluctuation? What a great question, Macy. You have been paying attention. So here's the deal. If you're using, for example, my plot box, you know that my plot box goes from Act 1 through Act 4, okay? And that there is one tab divider for each of the 8 major plot points and the 24 minor occurrences that could take place between those major plot points, okay? So let's look at this example right here. We're smack in the middle of Act 2, and I've got 3 suggestions for plot beats here, right? Happenings in the story, not major plot points, just things that happen to move the story along. I've got enemies and allies, I've got games and trials, and I've got earning respect. Now, one could argue all 3 of those things could be combined into a nice big fat beefy scene. Absolutely, you could certainly do that. Or all 3 of those things could be moved. Rather than having them at the beginning of Act 2, you could literally take those 3, take them out, and move them back here, behind the midpoint. Crazy talk, I know, right? Crazy talk. But that's the beauty of setting up your plot box just as a guide. It's not a straitjacket, it's just a light sweater that helps get you from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. In its simplest form, the plot box would be the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story. And that's it. And you're going to write between those 3 markers, those 3 navigational points. That's all it is. So let's look at a specific example. In chapter 14, where I'm talking about different story structures, Dan Wells's structure is one of the ones that I break down for you. He uses a 7-point story structure. So first you have the hook, which establishes the current situation as it is. That drives forward to the first plot turn, which is kind of an inciting incident. It's something that shakes things up. That then takes you to the pinch point, which is where the situation escalates. Now, look at this. You're going from a plot turn, something that sets things in motion, to something that escalates. But it's represented on the story model as a downturn, okay? It doesn't have to be. Instead, it could go up and 3 could be here. That way, you're driving forward on an upturn towards that midpoint. Totally acceptable. It's your story. Tell it how you want to. So then you get to the midpoint, which is where the protagonist changes into being proactive, so things stop happening to them and instead they start making things happen. And then you have the pinch 2, which is a major setback. See how that works? It makes sense for a setback to have a down line. If I were drawing this myself, I would make this an up line. So it goes 2, up to 3, up to 4. But rising action, that's just my opinion. Then we've got the next plot turn, which is the key to victory is being discovered here, and then finally, number 7, resolution. The conflict is resolved. However, what if in your story, you decide to flip these 2? Instead of having your second plot turn here, where they discover the key to victory, what if, as a result of this major setback, they do a little research, a little recon, something happens, and they make that discovery, and then the next thing that happens is they go backwards to some kind of setback. They discover the potion, they brew the potion begins to bubble, and then the potion fizzles, right? See how you can play with these You can play with whether they raise your story up or whether they bring your story down. And you can play with what order they appear in your story. Now, the chapter that I'm writing now is chapter 11, and it's about variations in the Zettelkasten. That is exactly what this is describing. Taking this pinch point, and rather than having it be a downturn, have it be something that raises them up. Taking this plot turn, and rather than making the discovery here as event number 6, you drop it down here and they discover it as a result of something bad that happens during event number 5. That's a variation. It's what I call a VITZ. VITZ, variations in the Zettelkasten. You can VITZ a story however you want to. It's entirely up to you. And that's the cool part about playing with story elements. You get to decide. So I would challenge you, those of you who are writing a story, what if you line out your story on a little story model like we've talked about, and then just start vitzing it. Introduce a variation. Rather than putting the midpoint here, what if I make that midpoint happen after this pinch point? Now, does that change where the middle is? Yeah, but so what? It's your story. You can play with it however you want to. So that is the short answer to, can I move around or change the plot points and the plot beats? Absolutely. Change them however you need them to serve your story. So I will leave you there. I made it through without coughing or blowing my nose. That's progress. I will continue barreling on. I'm getting good writing done. It's been a good writing words week, so that's all good stuff. And I will continue unpacking your questions. Thank you so much, everyone who has submitted questions. I've got 3 more to go, so I will keep on trundling down the road of answering those. And I will keep getting this book written for you because I'm having so much fun. I love showing up for you guys and helping you work out your story so that someday I can hold your book in my hands. That's my wish. So I will leave you there for today. As always, thank you to every subscriber. I will see you tomorrow.